The core of the Catholic faith is not that God is loving, though God is so, nor that God is lovable, though God is the final object of all desire, nor that God is found in, by, or through love. Catholic belief is that God is love. Judaism and Islam can't say this. Love, in the completeness of its meaning, requires an object as well as a subject, and a worthy object at that. Only the notion that within the oneness of God there is an ecstatic threeness of consciousness allows the Christian to proclaim God is love, and to mean by this also that love is God, love in all its forms, from disinterested charity, if this exists, to the most torrid corporeal passion. Much of the controversy concerning the Trinity and Christology, which raged in the 4th and 5th centuries, can be understood now in terms of people arguing about what certain words should be used to mean, rather than about what to make of the Nazarene Jesus ben Joseph. The words in question are ousia, physis, hypostasis, and prosophon in Greek, and esse, natura, substans, subsistence, and persona in Anglicized Latin. Hypostasis transliterates to understanding, but it originally meant the sediment lying at the bottom of a pond, stream, or river, believe it or not. By an obscure process of linguistic evolution, it took on the meaning of an instance or example, and this was its use in secular philosophy at the time of the disputes about Trinitarian and Christological doctrine. Physis translates to nature in English, as in physics, the study of what things are and how they interact with each other, as in physician, a person who understands human nature. The Latin natura is a pretty much direct translation of the Greek physis. Prosophon originally meant a kind of trumpet. It then took on the meaning of the mask worn by the protagonist in Greek drama to indicate which role they were playing at the time. The Latin persona is a direct translation of prosophon. In English, persona, as contrasted with person, implies a level of deception or deficit of integrity, and prosophon had something of this sense of fakery, pretense, or phantasm. Even so, the Latins often translated hypostasis as persona when talking about 3 hypostasis in the Trinity and 1 hypostasis in the Christ. Ousia originally meant wealth, but came to mean being. Its equivalent in Latin is esse, as in essential, but the Latins tended to prefer the word substance. To complicate matters, the Latins sometimes used subsistence as a translation for hypostasis. And to complete the confusion, both ousia and substance were sometimes equated with physis and natura. Essence is the English for esse, E-S-S-E. The word is sometimes equated with nature and sometimes employed in opposition to nature. Hence, the divine essence can sometimes mean the divine nature, the exhaustive account of the character and attributes of God, that is, according to what pattern God is constituted, and sometimes akin to from what stuff God is constituted. The Greeks of Egyptian Alexandria were unhappy with the Latin use of persona in connection with Trinitarian doctrine, as it carried the suggestion of fakery. For the Alexandrians, to say that God was tri-personal suggested that God only seemed to be Father, Son, and Spirit, that these were merely roles which God played, rather than constitutional identities in and of God's basic reality. On the other hand, the Latins were unhappy with the Alexandrian use of hypostasis in connection with Trinitarian doctrine, as it carried the suggestion of nature, being, or essence. For the Latins, to say that God was trihypostatic suggested that the Father, Son, and Spirit were three distinguishable beings. The Greeks of Syrian Antioch took an intermediate position, tending to support a compromise with Arianism, where the Son was allowed to differ from the Father as a matter of his being, essence, or nature, in order, as they saw it, to give a coherent basis for the distinction between the two hypostases of Father and Son. So, the Orthodox of Alexandria, Antioch, and Rome all agreed that there was a threeness as well as a oneness about God. They also agreed that in some sense the oneness was prior to the threeness, and that the Divine Father was in some sense prior to his Son and Spirit, though the three were equal in honour and shared a common nature. However, the question arose, which comes first, the subsistences or the being? In other words, does the one being of God give rise to the three persons, or do the three persons, or possibly the Father alone, give rise to the one being? The Latin account of the matter went as follows. God is, first of all, one being. In this single being are three understandings, hypostases, or personal realities. These are distinct from each other, but equally possess and impersonate, which is to make personal, not impersonate, which is to fraudulently present oneself as someone else. So each of these hypostases impersonates the single divine being. They form a community of mutual love. The Father immediately gives birth to the Son by self-knowing or generation, and the Son and Father jointly originate Holy Spirit as their mutual love by procession. The Alexandrian account of the same reality went as follows. There are three divine hypostases, each of which realizes the one divine being. They share the same nature, but in three different ways. The Father's way of being God is primary, whereas the two distinct ways in which the Son and Spirit are God are secondary. The hypostasis of the unoriginate Father gives rise to the being of God, which he then unreservedly shares with the hypostases of his Son and Spirit. The Father is the sole cause of the Son and the sole cause of the Spirit. This divergence of accounts gives rise to three conflicts. First, those identifying as Greek and Latin Catholics say that in God there is one substance, whereas those who identify as Eastern or Oriental Orthodox say that in God there are three hypostases. And so the Orthodox suspect the Catholics of denying the reality of the three divine persons as truly distinct from each other, while the Catholics suspect the Orthodox of believing in a triple exemplification of divinity, that is, tritheism. Moreover, in my personal experience, some self-identifying Orthodox are explicitly and enthusiastically tritheist. Second, the Orthodox accuse the Catholics of saying that the Son is a second cause of Holy Spirit alongside the Father and are thereby degrading the Holy Spirit. Whereas the Catholics accuse the Orthodox of degrading both the Son and the Spirit by insisting that the Father alone is God as God, and that the Son and Spirit are merely God by communication. Third, the Orthodox accuse the Catholics of believing that the unity of God is a matter of impersonal nature, whereas the Catholics accuse the Orthodox for believing that the unity of God is no more than a verbal fiction. Now, I'm going to kind of give a paragraph which is my view of the matter. I would say that on the one hand, the nature, being, essence or substance of the Son is not birthed of the Father, and the nature, being, essence or substance of the Son no more proceeds from the Father alone than it proceeds from the Father and the Son. This is the one being of God. The three hypostases each share this one singular divine reality. On the one hand, the hypostasis of the Son is evoked by the hypostasis of the Father as the beloved object of his love. And the hypostasis of the Spirit is implied by the hypostasis of the Father and the Son as their mutual, ecstatic, erotic, and joyful love. Hence, the Father is the archetype of the lover, as also of the knower. The Son is the archetype of the beloved, as also of the known. And the Spirit is the archetype of love itself, as also of knowledge, wisdom, or truth. It makes no sense whatsoever to ask which is prior, the love that is God, or the lovers who are God. How can there be a lover, the Father, without there being a beloved, the Son, or the eros, the spirit which binds them? Nevertheless, love arises from the lover, and the beloved could not be loved if there was no original potency to love. It is arguable that the one divine essence is identical with the relatedness of the three divine persons. All that God is love, and all that the Father, Son, and Spirit are, possess, and share is nothing other than the joyous eros which they have for and in each other. After all these words, it should be remembered that we have no clear idea of what we are talking about when we speak of divine persons, divine being, and divine love. After all, we hardly know what it is to be a human person. And as someone with a theoretical physics background, I must say we don't really know what energy or time or space or matter or any of these other things are really either. All these fundamental concepts are mysterious and impenetrable, at least at the present moment in time. We always work by analogy, whether it's in theoretical physics or philosophy or theology. We can do nothing else. All of our words are based upon our experiences of material, concrete, existent things, and God is not a material, concrete, existent thing at all. We, nevertheless, have grounds to be confident that these theological analogies that we use are not misleading, if we believe in the incarnation, that the second divine understanding was united to an integral human nature, that he himself humbled himself to participate unreservedly in the human form, that his business was to be a faithful witness to the truth about God, and that in meeting with him, his friends met the Father. Well, I hope that you are less confused about the Trinity than you were to start off with. If you're more confused, I'm sorry. God bless.